We often hear this term nowadays, the spirit of Jezebel. And we say it like it's scriptural, but it isn't. The term spirit of Jezebel is not in the Bible. Not once. So whenever anyone says it, whenever anyone uses it, remember they're saying something that's not in the Bible. No ifs, no buts. You can check different translations if you want to. It is not, well, it's probably in the Passion Translation, but in the Old Testament, Jezebel is an evil woman who stands against God and for Baal. And she is condemned. But Scripture never once even suggests that she does it because she has an evil spirit in her. She does it because she is a high priestess of Baal. The term spirit of Jezebel is not used in the church until the 20th century. That's 20 centuries. Hang on, that's 20 centuries. 20 centuries of church before the term is ever used. The earliest references I can find to it were in the 70s. With a guy called Frank Hammond and another guy called Jonas Clark, and then it was picked up by Frank Damasio and Paul Kane. It is not a historical church term. It's not part of church history. It's actually relatively new. And it's been used in some weird ways. It's been used to cut down women when they're dressed provocatively, which is clearly a reference to Jezebel in Revelation, or the Old Testament Jezebel painted her face just before she was killed. I don't know many women who put the makeup on the day they think they're going to die. Or sometimes it's just used against a woman you don't like. Oh, look at her. She has the spirit of Jezebel all over her. It implies that there's some spirit, some evil entity called the spirit of Jezebel that has taken control of this woman, and therefore don't trust her. That is an appalling misuse of Scripture. There's no scriptural precedent for ever using that term. It's also used today by so-called prophets who see themselves as modern-day Elijahs. So if somebody uses this term, if someone's critical of their ministry, and you say, well, actually, you're wrong about that stuff, you've got the spirit of Jezebel on you. When they're saying that, by calling you Jezebel, what are they saying about themselves is, I'm Elijah. Using that term, spirit of, suggests that somebody has an odious spiritual influence all over them. And listen, if somebody criticizes you, I think we should be a bit more gracious. These prophets who teach falsehood, who often teach a therapeutic gospel, who make up prophecy and say God said it, who take churches into deception, they've got far more in common with Jezebel than the people that they criticize with it. Be very careful of someone who calls themselves a prophet and says to anyone who criticizes them, they've got the spirit of Jezebel. You've got to say, I'd be very careful.